the future. I should have known that little blip was going to come, didn't I? Okay, Einar gave me about 40 minutes to explain the future. So I'm going to leave out some of the details. Let's get started. A quick introduction of me. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about the 100th anniversary of the Chamber. That's kind of fascinating. And you see a postcard from about 100 years ago. And that's the world they lived in. And I did love the progressives in Rockford's life. I suppose the definition of progressive has changed a little bit over the years. It's also 100 years of stories. Stories of journeys and arrivals. Leo Tolstoy said that all great literature is one of two stories. A man goes on a journey, or a stranger comes to town. Change and tradition. Invention and displacement. Things were built and destroyed. Things learned, things forgotten. Things connected, and things broken. There's been love and hate, young and young who grew old, life and death, success and failure, and the stories go on, and they will continue. Because you here all have stories, and you have been on journeys, and you have gone away, and you have come back. And those are all important. They are part of what make not simply a history, but also a future. The great quotation from Margaret Fairless Barber, to look backward for a while is to refresh the eye, to restore it, and to render it more fit for its prime function of looking forward. So before we think about the future, let us look back at your past. The Tinker's Cottage. So if you go there, what can be seen from there? When you look out of its windows, what can you see? And not simply with your eyesight, but with your hindsight and your foresight. What can be heard at the market? What do you think their conversations were about? Did some of the founders of the Chamber meet their wives there? What stories were told? Could 1910 have imagined 2010? Look at those people. What do you think they talked about? What I love about this is it's entitled The Horseshoer's Picnic. Those guys knew how to party. But here's a very important point to make about those gentlemen there, is that many of those types of people are the people who invent, are the people who start businesses. And quite often when we look at the past and look at the present and look at who's going to create the future, the workers are dismissed quite often. The people who go to the community colleges, the technical colleges, aren't noticed. But those are the people who have to change the tire while the car is still moving, or in that case, while the horse is still moving. And we must look to what ideas they bring to the market. All of these postcards I found on a website, jonrfd.com, and there's like 100 or more old postcards of Rockford, really cool. I thought this little thing, which was at the Circle Swing Harlem Park, how many of you would be willing to ride on something like that today? And the lawyers are going,
Yes. Right in New Zealand, they have no liability.
So I have to tell you, I came and visited Rockford on Saturday. Spent the day just wandering. I am from Monroe, Wisconsin. So, this was one of the cities we would visit when we were kids, but as I was putting together the talk, I thought, you know, I really don't know Rockford. I didn't know the downtown. So I came for a visit, and I wandered around. And one of the places I stopped was the cemetery at Main and Auburn. And there was this gravestone here. I have to get a little closer to read this. 1861, 1865, unknown, an unknown grave mark. We know not from what homes they came. We do not even know their names. We only know they fought and died. Erected to their memory by the Women's Relief Corps, 1960. So many of the wives of those fathers were probably in this organization. And again, it is that we lose so much of our past, we forget it, and it disappears. And we must struggle to remember who came before us, because we didn't arrive here on our own. And lots of times we sort of suffer from this notion of the egotism of time. Like Peter Pan, we look about and we don't pay attention to the fact that Wendy sewed on the shadow. But remember where Peter realizes the shadow is still attached and he goes, oh, the cleverness of me. That's a lot of what we are today, because we forget from whence we came. So, I went through the cemetery after I wandered the city because I wanted to know who did this, who started this. So, could we find out about the past of this city as they look forward to the future? From Carleton or from Barnes? Could we get something from Henry Reich? How about words from John Farson? Could we get a quotation from Bartlett?
Oh.
Hey, you try writing this stuff. Wait for it. We can get clues from Holmes, with assistance from Watson. Easy. Who were the startups? When I saw that one, I thought, oh, I have to do something with this. But Paul Callaghan on the video said the ComEd was a startup, but I'm sure there were more startups. Who were they? Which ones were early? Who was early? And was it hard? Was it difficult? They all had to figure out what works. Because not everything works. Trial and error. And the chambers helped people understand how to streamline that process. They needed carpenters and the fabricators and a lot of smiths. There were whites and blacks and browns. But were all of them heard? Were people listening? All of them were able, and they worked hard, dedicating their time, their lives, their efforts. Because every one of them was a countryman. No matter where they came from, they were Americans. Could they get the wolves to sit down and work with the lambs? There were many hills to climb, and you couldn't see over the hill. And today we have all this planning, and we hire futurists and all the like, but they didn't have them back then, and so they had to go with forethought and ambition and just trying to do whatever they could. There were stars, clearly. And many of them were swift, and some of them went boom. But they were wise, and wisdom was gathered and shared so that you could build a community that was known throughout the world. And as wise as they were, how come so much of it turned to rust? It goes away. You forget. If you forget history, you repeat it, and not necessarily the good parts of it. I want you to think in panoramic times. If you're going to be thinking forward, you also have to be thinking back. because you don't have to invent everything on your own. So always think past, present, and future. Spread out your thinking. And also, in another way of time, think about fads, trends, and principles. Fads are light, they're fluffy, they're fun. So the question is, do you have enough fads in your life so that you're not boring? Or do you have so many fads in your life that you're irrelevant? But fads are about a moment in time and enjoying the moment. Trends cross time, they change. And a fad you can safely ignore, but you can't ignore trends. You either have to work with it or fight against it. And principles are the things that transcend time. The things we stand upon. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And even if we deny them or ignore them, they are still true. And so the basic theme here is, you play with fads, you work with trends, and you live by principles. Easier said than done, because mostly we are seduced by fads, ignorant of trends, and resistant to principles. Alright, so let's think about some of the big futures that are coming at us, that we have to respond to. Let's look forward. The first thing you have to think about, if you're going to be thinking about the future, is the fact that microchips are now dominant out there. They outnumber us. And this is Moore's Law. And Moore's Law is the capacity of a chip doubles every 18 months. And in that 18 months, the cost of the chip cuts in half. So you have, right here, 1970, 4,000 transistors on a chip. That's when they were born. How many of you were born in 1970 or later? Please raise your hand. Okay, now hold them up so other people can see. Now, the rest of you, look at those people and understand they're like an entirely different species than the rest of us. They don't get us. They're digital. We're linear. If you tell them that you once had to actually get up off the couch and go and turn the knob, they won't believe you. And you notice that they look at you with a very strange look, because they're just going, how long are you going to be here? Because we got ideas, we got things to do. Let's move along. So we get up to about now, we are over 1 billion chips, or 1 billion transistors on a chip. From 4,000 over 1 billion. Good news and bad news with this. The good news is, computers are finally growing up. And the bad news is, they're about to enter their teenage years. Let me explain with this stuff. Now, you know what the thing with the stick is? Who knows what the round thing is? Roomba, yeah. Anybody own a Roomba? Roombas are robotic vacuum cleaners. They have a base. You plug them in, and then they wander away from the base, and as they move about the room, they bump into things, and they then back up, change their trajectory, and they keep bouncing on everything, covering the floor, and when they know they've covered the whole floor, they go back to the base and recharge. And they're kind of cool. So let's get rid of these. Let's bring back Moore's Law with more information on it. And what we have here is, this is Moore's Law, and then these yellow lines here are the brain capacity of living creatures compared to the chips. Approximation. But at about 2,000, brain capacity of a spider. That's what's in the Roombas today. Spiders navigate. But if the food isn't on the grid, they can't get it. We get up to about now, we're crossing the line somewhere between the brain capacity of lizards and mice. Tell me, Rockfordians, have you ever had a mouse in the house?
Yeah.
What can mice do? Find food. So, here's the Roomba of the not too distant future. You turn off the lights, and it wakes up. And the first thing it does is go. It starts to sniff, and it stalks the crumbs. If it finds a stain in the carpet, it would literally lick the carpet, which you haven't probably done since New Year's or so. It analyzes the dyes, the stain, the fibers, figures out how to lick that spot clean. And then when it's all done, it goes back and recharges. Now how many want a Roomba? We have to wait because they're not here yet, but they're coming. And We get up to 2020, and how many of you plan on still being alive in 2020? Anybody? How many gonna wait to see how the talk ends? By 2020, they figure on a single chip the brain capacity of somewhere between a monkey and a human. And notice, those of you claiming to be human, how close those lines are. So here's the scenario for 2020. You will be in your kitchen and you will look down and you'll see something spilled. So you will simply just call the Roomba. And you'll go, Roomba, and it won't answer you. So what do? You raise your voice and go, Roomba. And from the corner of the next room you hear this, what?
It's a teenager.
So you apologize, I'm sorry Roomba, sorry for bothering you, but something got spilled in the kitchen. Why do I have to do it all the time? Refrigerator just sits there, doesn't do anything. What about all my friends? I hate you. My life sucks. Are you prepared to argue with major appliances? Because you might have to. Because you want them to reason and you want them to problem solve. Because you're busy professionals. You don't have time to do that, so you're going to downsource it into the technology. Oh, look. See that? See that? That was just announced at Consumer Electronics Show, and it's a Roomba-type device, but a competitor that infrared signals sends out, so it automatically measures and analyzes the room so it doesn't have to bump into anything. These things are coming at you here, kids. Let's move on. And some of you may have heard about the singularity, and that's when chips are as smart as us. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried if they're going to be as dumb as us. Which brings up this marvelous quotation from Mitch Ratliff, who said, a computer lets you make more mistakes faster than any invention in human history, with the possible exception of handguns and tequila. By the way, on my website, which is davidzock.com, there are handouts, and one of the handouts has a lot of the quotations that you'll find here. Okay, anybody in real estate? Or know about real estate? And what's the most important rule in real estate?
Location, location, location.
Trick question. Location, amenities, access. You were in 20th century thinking. Because we know location doesn't always mean something important. Question, how many have an office? How many have to leave the office in order to get work done? What have I just proven here? So, let's look here at alternative spaces here in Rockford where people should go for work. Like, for instance, having a brainstorming session around the feet of Jane is probably pretty good because the basic message is either you're inventive and creative or you die. And of course there's a time machine. Oh, the Time Museum, that's gone, isn't it? Oh, never mind.
That's Children's Museum in the States.
Katie's Cup, Restoration Cafe. What about brainstorming at the Art Museum? And see this thing going on up here? How many of you know about wall blank? Okay, now you're going to learn. When I was putting this talk together, I searched for a gallery here in town. And I found wall blank, and I was like, what's that? But I saw this space. And I ended up contacting Sean Kelly, who's the owner. He's a printer and a graphic designer. He's got an internet web-based business of taking artwork, original artwork from artists all over the world, and then printing limited runs and then distributing them all over the world. And at gallery events in this space, which is in the brewery, old brewery on Prairie Street, over 1,000 people show up. Think about that in terms of outreach, and think about that in terms of young professionals, as well as if you were to look closely at the video, you're going to see an awful lot of them are not so young that it wouldn't have been out of place there. But think about the type of work that we have to do today, and what are the best environments for being creative, for for connecting with people. But please understand that the wealth is in the connection. Our ability to connect people, things, and ideas, especially people, things, and ideas that we didn't think were connectable, that's how we create wealth. And we're not just talking dollars and cents. We're talking about anything that you value. All of it is because of connections. And an awful lot of young people don't connect in traditional ways. They may not all work in big organizations. They may not have fellow employees. But they get together and they connect. And so they'll find somebody else to do the IT work. And they'll find somebody else to do the marketing work. And it's all about connection and outreach. And it's based upon trust, which is the foundation of freedom. And it is the foundation of everything we do. And that is more important, to establish and recognize the trust. They don't have to work with each other all the time or continually, but they connect to get something done. Rockford has tremendous manufacturing and logistics, and I want to add in, for the future, printing. Let me explain. Logistics is all about moving people, things, and ideas. So, a bank like MCOR is in logistics because it's about moving digital money. Cadbury, or Kraft, whatever it's going to be, is about moving food. And anybody that denies that chocolate is food, leave now. Fat wallet, logistics of moving ideas. We've got to understand that some of the innovations coming in logistics is not just about moving things, which is how the emphasis is with the likes of Supplyco or UPS, but it's also moving people and ideas or not moving them. Because if I can take my laptop and be connected to the world, I can be where I want to be. Question, why would somebody want to be in Rockford as opposed to need to be? And how do you build up the amenities as well as the access so that when I am here or anybody is here, they have unlimited resources? Printing and manufacturing are blurring. These top three things, the gears, the shaft head, and the wrenches, are all printed. Three-dimensional printers. If we can print things, how will manufacturing change? Those wrenches, you can open, roll open and close the jaws. It's printed. Those machines down at the bottom are prototypes of food printers. So imagine what all the different food organizations here might be able to do in terms of design. Can you imagine the presentation of food in the future? Might be fantastic. And look at this. A company called Invotech. 3D bioprinters. As in printing human tissue. Printing human organs. That product, which the end result is still in development, but the product itself, printing layers of cells, that's a commercially available printer. Do we have to think differently about how we make things or where we make things? Is the factory of the future going to be in China or closer to the point of consumption, which may in fact be your back bedroom? How many of you have a printer in your house? And if I had asked the question in 1910, and of course we're just getting started, nanotech, molecular level mechanics. There's lots of different directions in terms of how we will build things. But the nanotechnologists basically say, We're not inventing anything. We're figuring out how does nature build things. Are you getting the message? Are we getting the message? Do we have too many messages? How many right now are tweeting under the table? Did I catch some people? See, here's one of the things that's going on, is that we know we can have anything the way we want it, so we are getting unlimited customization. And you have to recognize that customers are now co-workers. Because if you want the customer to fully utilize all the potential of what you're offering, you have to bring them inside and help train them to best use the unlimited number of services and products that you're offering. Because people don't read instruction manuals, right? There's a book called Design of Everyday Things by Donald Norman. In there he says that instruction manuals are basically nothing more than evidence of design flaws. Professional boundaries are being blurred because we get to interfere. How many of you have ever been to a doctor? Direct question. How many of you, when you went to the doctor, brought in printouts from the internet explaining to the doctor what you've diagnosed you have? And doctors actually like that because it shows that you are actually involved and interested in repair and recovery. But there's a problem with a sense of division by design, because as we get better and better design and we customize down to the individual level, the individual becomes somewhat intolerant of anything that doesn't quite match their exact vision of how things should be. Oh, the cleverness of us. You know, we've developed the most amazing tools of communication. Do we have anything important to say? The average 13 to 17-year-old sends or receives 1,742 text messages a month. The majority of 18 to 25-year-olds admit to texting while driving.
Amen.
Multitasking. I know it's spelled wrong, but I was doing a bunch of other things at the same time. I didn't get around to texting. Get off my face. Whatever. And, get this, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you work on a computer? And it's probably all of you. Research shows that you work on a computer, you touch your computer more than anything else in your life. And they don't touch back. Not yet. But they will. And when they do, the game's over. How many of you suffer from ADOS? Attention deficit, ooh, shiny. I want you to pick up a book called Distracted by Maggie Jackson. Subtitled, The Erosion of Attention and the Coming Dark Age. It's a real feel-good book for the, whatever decade we're calling this. The old one was the uh-ohs. Our ability to pay attention, to focus, is being so distracted. And let me ask you, honestly, can you do good work? Can your children do good work when they are being trained to have the attention span of a housefly? I missed something back there.
Housefly.
Okay, but let me talk about this. Concierges. The concierge is the customer service model of the future. Two things I want to tell you about. The top photo there is of Sean Kelly in his office, and one of the things we talked about was, he said that he's like a curator on the internet and helping people understand and appreciate art and guide them through the experience. On Saturday, I also stopped at the Coronado gift shop. And Lisa Tatosian, who runs the shop, got talking with her, told her I was coming in to do a talk, And was there any chance I could see the theater? Well, no, it was closed. They were doing the symphony on Saturday night. And as we got talking, finally she kind of looked, she went over the door, locked it, and took me on about a 45-minute tour of the theater. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I have been to a lot of theaters. That is the most beautiful theater I have ever seen. Do you understand what you have here?
Yes.
But not just the theater. The old building stock. The homes. This is a beautiful city with a lot of old, beautiful buildings waiting for life. Lisa was a concierge. And while we were talking, someone came up the door and I said, "You better go unlock that." So she went and unlocked it, and this woman came in with a necklace that needed to be restrung. Well, Lisa didn't have to do that. But as we talked after this woman left, she goes, "But I know her, I like her, and this is what I need to do for my customers, so that they understand that I can bring them anything from the world, but it's the experience of being here and treating people the way they want to be treated." And so you have to be thinking in all your organizations, how and who are the concierges? A little bit further about some stuff that Sean is doing. Last year on his anniversary of the business, they decided to, whoever ordered this print, that they would hand deliver it anywhere in the country. And then they found some guy named Joe who was here and friends of his, and he's kind of a professional vagabond, I guess he calls himself. And then one of the people that shares the space in the brewery with Sean is a guy who collects vintage Lincoln Continentals. So we had a 62 Lincoln Continental and somebody that was going to get this print delivered in North Carolina. And then along the way, the thing was tweeted and Facebooked, and people had to sort of write to Joe and make Joe drive and tell him where to go on the route, and he stopped at all these coffee shops. And these are all the people that were following this thing throughout the country. All free, all part of a conversation. I love the car is beautiful. It's got the suicide doors. But here he's having a picnic with two people that had tweeted along the way and met with them. These people are holding up these cards that they put in their windows, advertising the whole trip. And it was also on Flickr. You need to understand something that I think a lot of young people understand, is that the economy is all about attention, experiences, and attitude. Your attention is the most valuable resource that you own, and basically you give it away. So anybody you're trying to get in terms of the economy is you've got to grab the attention, hold it, pull them through an experience, and in the experience, purchase, engage with products, services, and whatnot, so that at the end of this experience, you have an attitude that is positive. Because it is about trust, and the average American encounters somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 advertising messages a day, all about branding and all about selling something. So it's like the entire generation, that younger generation, they're like from the state of Missouri. Show me, prove it. And so it is the engagement through these kinds of things that trust is built, and engagement is driven. It's neat stuff. But let's get back to childhood. I like playing indoors because that's where all the electrical outlets are. A book called Last Child Left in the Woods starts with that, and in the New York Times today, there was this little chart showing that just in 5 years, the average time a child in the United States spends with technology has gone up about 2.5 hours to 10 hours, 45 minutes a day spent with technology. So in the sense of, they don't go outside, they don't have encounters with nature anymore. Children do not understand natural cycles anymore. They have reboot buttons. What happens when you do not understand nature, the slowness of nature, the cycle of nature? What are we losing? Here's a school. It's not in Rockford, it's in Milwaukee, where I live now. It is a school built for children. And of course you think, well, all schools are built for children. No, they're built to employ adults. Let me tell you about this school, Emmanuel Elementary. The walkway, the railings are child height, relief carved stones. Here's how the elephant got its trunk, an alligator stretching out the trunk. In that whole surround as you walk in, there are storks and Indian braves and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my.
No Packers, though.
Above the doorway, 5 stone pillars guarding the entrance. In the tower, there was an iron cutout, girl with a jump rope, boy in a little Indian headdress, and a boy with a fishing pole. On one side you can't see, shows a girl and a boy sitting at their desks, and the boy is pulling the girl's pigtail. Wrapping the school are 15-inch high terracotta panels of Mother Goose themes. There are 2 kindergarten rooms. This was built in 1930 for a German immigrant neighborhood. Poor German immigrants. Germans invented kindergarten. In one kindergarten room, there are panels in the floor you lift out to reveal a sandbox. In the other kindergarten room, there's a fireplace and a fountain. And I heard from people who went there as children, and the teacher would have a rocking chair, and they would sit in front of the fire while she read to them. And the school is now closed because it's old, it's inefficient, and it doesn't meet modern standards. Here's some schools of today. In Monroe, my hometown, that top one there are no windows in any of the classrooms. Wouldn't want to distract the children now, would we? But you look at these things, look at the one down in this lower corner. It's got like a honeycomb, and the little the little students go up through there. But so much about schools today is about measurement, and how do you measure the immeasurable? And what happens if you don't? What if you, because you can't measure it, you ignore it and send it on its way? I found this little booklet up in Wausau, where my mom lives. And it's the Manual Public Schools of Wausau, Wisconsin from 1903 of memory gems of what the teachers and the school board back in 1903 believed that all students should memorize 1st through 8th grade. The introduction goes, the foreword, the endeavor of the teachers who made this collection of selections and quotations has been to admit only what has permanent value as a sole treasure, choice literature to be learned in school today, not only for today, but for always, thus fighting against the panoramic tendencies of the age. 1903. What would those people say about today? What would the founders of this organization say about the world that we are navigating in? It goes on. It is not to be understood that the pupils will fully understand all that is given for their grade. Truth is vital, and its message flashes upon the inward eye in deeper meaning as the soul passes through those experiences that alone make true wisdom possible. Now, you know as well as I do, there are words in that foreword that will not be allowed in schools today. I mean, to suggest that people actually might have souls, or that there might be truth, or something permanent. What a radical notion. This is not suggest that history be an anchor, but it is a toolbox. We must learn to use the tools. Here is a poem called Rienzi's Address to the Romans that 7th graders had to memorize. This is just a short segment of it. Rouse ye Romans, rouse ye slaves. Have ye brave sons? Look in the next fierce brawl to see them die. Have ye fair daughters? Look to see them live. Torn from your arms, disdained, dishonored. And if ye dare call for justice, be answered by the lash. Yet this is Rome, that sat on her 7 hills and from her throne of beauty ruled the world. Yet we are Romans. Why, in that elder day, to be a Roman was greater than a king. And once again, hear me, ye walls, that echo to the tread of either Brutus. Once again, I swear, the eternal city shall be free. Her sons shall walk with princes. 7th graders. Now take that poem and change the word Roman to Rockford. And think about the challenges you face, and think about what if 7th graders had eloquence and understood such issues in terms of rising again and beating the odds and building a city that could be a symbol to the world. But we don't read those poems anymore. We tweet. So for your listening pleasure, I have tweeted this. Wake up, Romans. Got sons dead, daughters dissed, want justice as if. Rome, whatever. Romans, losers. Next time I'll kick your... I am on Twitter, Futurist. Y'all follow me, okay? Here are the modern memory gems. This is what the children are to memorize today. Oh, the cleverness of us. G.K. Chesterton is my favorite author. And he knows probably more, having died in 1936, knows more about what's going on today than most of us. And he said, it is of new things that men tire, of fashions and proposals and improvements and change. It is the old things that startle and intoxicate. It is the old things that are young. The conclusion here is not change versus tradition. It is change and tradition. You must have both, and you must be able to choose. And the problem is we don't know how to choose. And so the choices get made for us sometimes. And so we must be engaged in trying to understand, where do we go from here? What do we hold on to? And what do we let slip? You look at your city. Now, I'm a fanatic about architecture, so that's what I focused in on. But it is to know about the past, the present, and imagine the future. It is to put fads in their place, use them if necessary, but don't embrace them. Work with the trends and stand upon the principles. And the principles that were true in 1910, by and large, are still true today. The things we stand upon. And when you have a place to stand, you can move the world. So here's the question I will leave you with. Do you want a Rockford in which anything, everything can be new? Meaning anything can be tossed aside and go away. Or do you want a Rockford in which many old things stay young? Thank you.